In 1997, a building on Washington Ave sold for $300,000. By 2019, part of the same building sold for nearly $5 million. That one number pretty much sums up the last 20 years in Portland. And you know what? The next 5 are going to move even faster. I'm a local realtor, born and raised here, and today we're breaking down exactly what's coming and what it means for your money. If you walk the eastern waterfront today, you see Casco Bay views, luxury condos, and rooftop bars. Go back 20 years, and it looked completely different. You had massive floating dry docks, active rail yards, and a lot more of that industrial feel. This was a working port first, and a place to live second. That was the area in the early 2000s. Still important for the region, but it hadn't really hit the national radar yet. The identity was tied to a working-class maritime economy, and the biggest presence on the waterfront was Bath Iron Works, a military ship repair yard with a floating dry dock 750 feet long. The focus was production, not residential living. Real estate looked very different back then as well. Median home prices across the state were in the low 100,000s, even on the peninsula. Prices were a fraction of what they are today. Most of the housing stock was older, triple-decker, and Victorian homes that hadn't been updated in years. There really weren't luxury condo developments. I'm talking about lower density and way less demand coming from outside the area. Portland was still somewhat of a regional secret. People wanted to be here, but it hadn't seen the level of investment that was coming next. That's the starting point. Speaking of Portland's transformation, if you're watching this because you're seriously considering moving here, I work with buyers in Portland every single day and can give you a clear read on what's actually available right now. My contact info is in the description down below. Now, the shift that changed everything didn't come from a big development plan or a marketing push. It started with something leaving. And when we get into how HOA costs are shaping buying decisions today, you'll see how that one moment set everything in motion. But what that kicked off and how Portland identity got rebuilt from there, that's where the story really starts. Back in 2001, Bath Iron Works left the eastern waterfront. That one move gave the city a huge piece of land right on the water that wasn't fully used. And a lot of what's happened in Portland real estate since goes back to that moment. The city kicked off a master planning process with over 30 stakeholders. What followed was about 15 years of the most aggressive redevelopment Portland has seen. That eastern waterfront opened for higher density mixed-use projects. Steel-framed office buildings started going up, a hotel replaced old rail yards, modern condos started taking over spaces that used to be industrial, and then you've got the India Street area coming back as a strong corridor connecting the old port to the eastern end of the peninsula. The whole change was pretty dynamic. At the same time, something else was going on away from the water. Developers started looking at older brick warehouses and institutional buildings and saw a real opportunity. Adaptive reuse became a big theme through the 2000s. Old school buildings turned into market rate housing, while the original exteriors stayed in place and the interiors were fully updated. One example really shows how big the shift really was. There was an old industrial bakery on Washington Ave, the Nissan Bakery. The property sold for $300,000 in 1997. By 2019, part of the building sold for about $4.6 million. That's what happens when a city moves from an industrial base to a service-driven one, and demand starts growing faster than supply can keep up. When we get into HOA costs and carrying expenses later, you'll see how the supply and demand gap is now creating a very different financial picture for buyers. Stay with me. Now, between 2015 and 2020, the market started to tighten in a real way. Inventory kept dropping to balanced levels. Portland's reputation as a food and culture city had taken off naturally. And because of that, buyers from places like Boston, New York, and Washington, D.C. started moving here in real numbers, looking for a better lifestyle and more value compared to what they were leaving behind. Right now, Boston is still a top source of out-of-state buyer interest, but that's not random, and it hasn't slowed down. But to understand that pressure and what it means for prices today and where things could go next, you need to see where the market stands right now. Here's the real picture right now, and it's a bit more layered than the headline numbers make it seem. Median home prices around here are well above the state average. Across Maine, you're looking at something in the upper 300s to around 400,000. In Portland, prices usually start in the mid 500,000s and move into the high 600s and even beyond, depending on where you are and the type of property. Buyers come in expecting Maine pricing and pretty quickly realize Portland plays at a different level. And I see this every single day. The condo market has had an interesting split recently. After years of heavy competition, things moved into a much more balanced spot. Prices have come down from their peaks, and buyers I'm working with right now see that as a window of opportunity. The fundamentals behind the market haven't changed though. Here's the thing with supply. Portland sits on a peninsula. It can't expand outward, it can only build up. And for a long time, zoning didn't really allow much of that. So you end up in a situation where demand keeps outpacing how fast the city can add housing. There's also a lock going into effect. A lot of homeowners locked in on low rates a few years ago, and they're not selling. They've stayed put. That keeps existing inventory tight and puts more pressure on new construction to keep up with people moving in from larger cities. Active listings are up over the past year, so there is movement, but the market is still below balanced levels. Some of this is about to run into a major wave of new development, where those projects are going and what they mean for the Skyline. That's what we're getting into now. The zoning rules that kept Portland low-rise for decades are gone, and what's opened up since then is something the city hasn't seen before. In late 2024, the city updated its land use rules, and what they did was open the door for more density in key areas. So you can build more units up, go taller in parts of downtown, and you're not tied to parking requirements anymore. And that's what's making these bigger projects actually work. Let me walk you through the main projects that are either under construction or ready to break ground right now. First, Portland Foreside. This is about a 1.4 million square foot mixed-use development project on the eastern waterfront. Industrial land not that long ago. The Promenade Hotel and Residence is a big part of this. A luxury hotel with branded residence and open views of Casco Bay, fully approved and ready to go. Sun Life US has already set up a large corporate headquarters here, which is pulling in strong professional demand. You've also got 4 Points Marina, a major setup with space for over 100 boats, and there's a full rebuild of that stretch of waterfront. Next, Washington Avenue. This street has already changed a lot. It went from an industrial backstreet to one of the strongest restaurant corridors in New England, with over 20 spots and real national attention. Now the housing's catching up. A 72-unit apartment project broke ground in November 2025 and is aiming for completion in 2027, adding real supply to an area that has already seen strong demand. And then public infrastructure. This part doesn't get much attention, but it should. The city is putting money into the Congress Square redesign, with work running through 2026. Harbor Common, a new public green space on the eastern waterfront with walking paths and event space, is set to break ground in April. These are the pieces that make higher density actually work over time. Across all of this, the pattern is pretty consistent. Portland grows in steps. These projects add density and shift the skyline, but they don't flood the market with supply. Pricing pressure doesn't go away, it just changes shape. So as you think about everything we've covered, this is the part to hold on to. Portland is going to keep growing. The real question is whether you're in a position to buy before the next phase of growth gets fully priced in. Understanding the pipeline is one thing. Knowing what it means for where you buy, and what it actually costs, that's what we're getting into next. Over the next decade, Portland is going to get more vertical, more dense, and a lot more competitive for buyers. That's where things are headed. Single-family homes on the peninsula are much harder to find. That's already happening. With the new zoning in place, areas like Bayside and downtown are going to change the most. You'll see more vertical housing where the last open lots can be used. Condo living becomes the norm on the peninsula, and well-located resale units with real character get more competitive as new construction keeps coming online. Basically what this means is your buying strategy has to adjust. Condo living is becoming the main path for a lot of buyers in the peninsula, and that shift comes with something you need to look at closely. Last year, many condo associations saw HOA fees go up by 25 to 40%. The increase is being driven by rising insurance costs, higher maintenance, and more expensive labor as buildings age. And I see this every single day. Buyers come in with a purchase price in mind and then get caught off guard when they see the monthly costs actually look like with the HOA fee included. If you're buying here, you have to look at the fee structure just as closely as the purchase price. That's just part of the deal. On the demand side, people are still moving here. Boston buyers are still the most active group, and the reason's pretty simple. Even with higher prices, the prices still feel well below Boston. The gap keeps pressure on prices here as the city grows with more infrastructure, more jobs, and more amenities. The flow of buyers from larger cities isn't going anywhere. Now, are prices going to jump the way they did in 2010? Maybe not at the same pace, but a real drop over the next decade isn't supported by what we're seeing. Demand stays super steady, supply grows slowly, and buyers who make smart moves now are the ones who will look back and understand the timing. The window is open now, but it won't stay open forever. Portland has already changed, and the next phase is already approved and starting to move. The buyers who see this right now are the ones who look back at this moment and understand exactly what they've stepped into. If you're tracking this market and want to talk through what these developments mean for your situation, send me an email. It's on screen now. I also linked a video where I break down how Portland's market has shifted and what it means for buyers and sellers right now. Watch that next and you'll have the full picture.